in the work that I do with my wife, we speak quite a bit, and we talk about boundaries having a gate, and you have the key to that gate. So you can open the gate and let people in, or you can shut the gate and lock it.
Yeah.
But as you grow and as you become your true self, you don't ever give up that key. Even in a committed long-term relationship that I am with my spouse, we have our boundaries, we have our gates, and we each own our keys. So we're able to be interdependent rather than codependent, or so independent that you end up rubbing up against the other person because you're not listening. So it goes back to the
Hi, I'm Scott Ware, the publisher of Radiance Magazine, where the soul path is lit. And it can be found at radiancemm.com for all things ascension, consciousness expanding. And I have with me today a certified counselor in the realm of addiction and recovery, Bill Woodbury. Bill, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for being here. What is it about these times in particular that might cause someone to seek the services of someone in addiction and recovery?
Right. Well, obviously, these have been very trying times, perhaps leading up to 2020, and then 2020 on has been difficult for many people. And what I've noticed over the last few years, especially with the isolation, is an increase of alcohol and other drug use, as well as other addictive behaviors because of the isolation.
And use and abuse, right?
Yes, definitely, where they become very dependent because they have no other outlets. They're not around people. Their relationships are pretty much locked down, if you will, emotionally and physically. So the substances will help while away the boredom. So there's been a high rate of relapse back to drugs and alcohol, people that have had quite a bit of clean time through the anxiety and the inability to communicate with their support, other than perhaps through the idea of a web page or Zoom. The live connections aren't there. Recovery is so important to have the hugs, to have the eye contact, to have the relational times where you're getting together for coffee or lunch, and
to be in the energy that you want to be in.
Yes, sir. Yeah, definitely. The energy shift that's happened, I think, caught many people off guard.
Sure.
And they didn't really know how to adjust, to it. So they went back to their old coping mechanisms, which they felt they could control. Which
let me say that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's it. Which gets out of control.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me that I wanted to ask you the benefits of this whole pandemic in the realm of addiction recovery. And what I'm thinking of is there's a lot of people in life where a lot of us have comfort zones and places we can hide out and not have to deal with certain things or look at certain things, but we're partaking, whether it's a food addiction, whatever it is. But when the pressure's turned up, then it comes to the fore, it comes to the top, and you have to address it because it's getting in the way of your life. It's affecting your life. Right. And has that been good for us?
Wow, that's an interesting question. Yeah, I think it does bring up the defects, to use a recovery term, defects of character, to light. And if you have an awareness, or you have people around you that are able to help enlighten you and grow you, yes, I think it can cause you to become resilient and to overcome your dependencies in unhealthy ways on busyness. That was one of the things I noticed for me, is that it cut me down on purpose, in some ways to really look at what's important. So I was able to refocus and drop some of the unnecessary energy drain throughout the day.
You have your coworkers have talked about some special abilities you have or special skills that you have. What does Bill Woodbury bring to the party that is uniquely Bill Woodbury?
Right. That's good. Well, I think 32 years of doing this has a lot to do with it. I am in recovery myself. I got sober in 1987. So that was my background, kind of getting into it. But over the years, I've done a number of things. I've run treatment centers. I had an intervention practice for a number of years in the 90s and worked in many different capacities throughout. One of my passions right now is I do equine assisted coaching and therapy. So I work with families primarily with my partner is an energy healer and myself and her beautiful horse, Missy. So we do quite a bit of family healing with the trauma of addiction and the misunderstanding. So that's something that I really, really enjoy. And I've always called myself a frontliner. Meaning
Okay.
I'm in the trenches. I like to be in the trenches. I like to work with the families and the clients. I don't like to just sit back and watch, but I've also taught at private schools as well as Loyola in LA and Glendale College. So I've done a lot of work with addiction and intervention. I'm currently doing an intervention online training with Ed Storty and Patty Pike, training and certifying interventionists, which is just a joy to me. So I have a diverse background.
And then when you're with someone, what can they expect in their connection with you? Let's say they're not even sure they should go into recovery or even consider it, or they got an issue, but what would you bring? I think you bring warmth and wisdom. I can tell you have an easygoing manner. I imagine that's helpful, but what else can someone expect?
Well, that I'm going to listen. One of the things I love about being at Roots and with the therapist there is we all seem to have this natural understanding to listen, love. And I was first told that many years by a mentor that we have to listen and then really listen and, be engaged and really connected with the person in a very professional way, but really get down to the heart of the matter. People that deal with substance abuse, you don't want to get up in their head because that's where they live. But if you could move them to a heart-to-heart connection, you'll get somewhere, even if they don't know they're going, because of that ability to lower their anxiety, drop the defenses, their denial mechanisms, and the next thing you know, there's a little flash of their heart. And it's so unusual in some cases that whoa.
They can start to cry.
They do. They cry. They start to get honest. I had a gentleman yesterday at Roots, that was struggling, and the way the questions went, the way it was just him and I in a room. I could see the fear and the defense breaking up. It was almost like it was like a brick that was, how brick is made out of this dust. You could see kind of the bricks breaking and the dust going, so it's up to him to do that.
That's the rewarding part for you too. That's when you've helped someone, and in helping others, you're helping yourself. Yes.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think one of the principles that I've always liked about 12-step recovery is you give it away to keep it. And while my personal recovery does not necessarily soothe all of my professional needs are not taking care of my personal recovery, there is a crossover there that's very healthy. But obviously I have my recovery, a big proponent of staying in recovery, doing therapy when necessary, whatever it takes to grow and change your life.
I'm interested in that. You've been sober for so long, about 30 years, 32?
Well, 34. Yeah.
34.
Coming up 35 in June.
Nice. Congratulations. That's awesome. And that sounds like a special token or pin or 35
well, I
years?
think you get a nice little metal coin usually. Somebody in my life that goes out, buys a real nice one. And then when you go to your meetings that you go to, you get a lot of love and hugs and cakes and and wow, 35 years.
So how do you see society from that point of view? From, you haven't been partying through the 90s and but you've seen people have different thoughts on it, around it. We're going through what we're going through. What's like that long view that you've seen that someone who's 22 years old wouldn't have the knowledge of?
Boy, and that's a lot of the clients that I work with. My wife and I co-authored a book called Enableism, and where we're talking to the families primarily of the 20-somethings that have such an interesting view about drugs and alcohol and long-term, a lot of them they're not in the long game. A lot of the youth now are kind of in the short game. They don't really believe in a lot of long-term. It's slowly changing, but especially in 2013, when I started doing research for the book, the overdose rates were just getting outrageous, like they are again now because of the lockdowns and the fentanyl that's coming into America. But at that time, we just saw an ambivalence. And so, yeah, they don't have the long game, would be my answer. There is an understanding that emerging adulthood, it takes longer to merge into adulthood for various reasons. And I've done tremendous research. A number of very prestigious therapists and universities have done research in emerging adults. And what they found is it's just taking longer. And there's so many roadblocks to grow up. And what I've coined is LSA, late stage adolescent. They get stuck in their adolescence. So they can't get out of that as easy, because a lot of times they've been coddled. They have too much, if you will, that's given to them without a whole lot of understanding of what it takes for them to get it. So they become entitled. And that's not a knock. It's an unfortunate condition. And but what I have found is when they get purpose and when they see a way out, they jump quick, and they really can go from the emerging to adulthood very quickly.
Well, and isn't that why one of the reasons they may have delayed coming into adulthood is because adulthood looked like it sucked, because it looked like they had to do a job that they hated for money to get enough money to pay what the rent is these days in many cities, as opposed to in this system with they were given a permission slip, if you will, to follow their true self, their authentic self, and do what they love.
I love that. That's so good, Scott. I work a lot on values with them. What are your values? What is your purpose? At Roots, we really stress a holistic idea. And if you borrow something from the Native American spirituality, the idea of a circle, which I think is so incredibly important in life, that there's seasons. And we stress at Roots, and I stress in the work that I do through the equine or whatever it is, that it's emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical. All of those quadrants have to be in some harmony. So what are your values? How do you see yourself? You need to be your own person, but then not somebody else's person.
And once you establish who you are and you anchor that, you still have the challenges of other energy streams coming at you. I may be this way, but when I'm in this situation, I've been this way before. So the goal is to integrate, isn't it? Yes. And what does that mean?
Yeah. And when you look at that idea of the circle, in the middle is a smaller circle that says balance. And that's how I see that, is that there's a balance that happens when you're integrating. So wherever you're at, whatever the emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual energy is, you have a balance. So you're able to keep your true self, your true north, while you're in situations where before you might act more like a chameleon than yourself. And I see that a
Right.
lot in addictive, especially younger people. They've been so used to adapting to whatever group they're put in or whatever emotional air is in the room,
Yeah.
especially if they grew up in a dysfunctional home. The values that their parents have may or may not have been good, but they're not theirs.
Right.
So they have got to, even if they're adapting a lot or adopting a lot of their family's values, you got to own them. You got to put them in your circle and in your balance. So they're not
And make it
somebody else.
okay. Make it
Make it
okay that
okay.
you have a difference of opinion with other people and you're in a different place, especially when they're used to you being a certain way. They want you to keep being that way, but you need to be this new person. You have to get over the idea that that's fake, that's not
Mhm.
me, and that's because it's unusual. And you have to move past it to be okay with, this is what I want to do, even though now these people aren't my friends or they
Yeah.
feel offended. That's a
Yeah.
challenge.
It is a challenge. And I see that a lot in addiction. We see that a lot in mental health work. You get emotionally labeled by the people around you. So it's easy to go into an emotional relapse yourself
Mm,
because
yeah.
people don't change their opinion of you until you truly change your opinion of yourself and you take ownership of who you are by setting these boundaries. And, in the work that I do with my wife, we speak quite a bit and we talk about boundaries having a gate, and you have the key to that gate. So you can open the gate and let people in, or you can shut the gate and lock it.
Yeah.
But as you grow and as you become your true self, you don't ever give up that key.
Mm.
Even in a committed long-term relationship that I am with my spouse, we have our boundaries, we have our gates, and we each own our keys. So we're able to be interdependent rather than codependent, or so independent that you end up rubbing up against the other person because you're not listening. So it goes back to those listening skills.
My definition of of spiritual or spirituality
Mhm.
is getting to know yourself, just your true self. And in recovery, that's what happens. I can't help but think that many people come out spiritual, which is not religious. It's not giving your power up to any other source, which is not necessarily what all religion is. I understand that, but being empowered to be your best self.
Right.
And so in recovery, it's almost like I know it's a messy journey to get there, and there's off and on stops and starts
Mhm.
and acceptance of what is, but it seems to be very valid, and I don't know how to say this, but I mean a good way to find yourself. Certainly if that's the track you've chosen and that you're on,
Mhm.
definitely get in there. And it can happen quicker than a lot of people. They become their best self gradually over decades, sometimes not even on their deathbed, sometimes on their deathbed.
Mhm.
So
Oh, I'm with
um
you. Yeah.
yeah,
I
seems like a lot
found
of
it to be a
powerful
blessing.
people. What's that?
I said I found it to be a blessing rather than a
Mm,
curse,
mm.
this hard road. You're right in what you're
Because it's
saying, that
faster in some ways.
it can be because it's a life or death situation. So
Right.
it's when you're faced with, as they say in recovery, death, jails, or institutions, it's pretty much where it ends up with drug addiction. You look at yourself very clearly and very honestly. You have a sense of a radical acceptance where you look at your traumas, you look at your hurts, all the things you're struggling with, and you say, I'm better than this. I can let go of the things I need to let go of and then work on the things I need to work on. That's a radical acceptance.
It
So I'm
is for
not,
people
yeah,
to
go
for
ahead.
people to know they're that powerful and that they can do that is a big deal.
Huge. Yeah, it's very freeing. It is a hard journey. Sometimes there's setbacks. Oftentimes relapses are viewed as a negative failure. I see them more, if they can be worked on and dealt with, as a learning experience. That resiliency oftentimes is born out of what appears to be a setback or a failure, when in actuality it's releasing a lot of the negativity in you and getting you focused true north.
Because if it's one day at a time, which it's the day. It doesn't matter if it's 30
Right.
years or
I
three
agree.
hours.
Totally agree. That's what I talk about statistics and treatment centers, being around running centers for years, and you get all the statistics, you know. I throw them all out and I say it's a 1 day at a time program.
Yeah.
I don't know a statistic that's 1 day at a time. So you just, whatever it is you do, you get back up and you work harder at it. So
Well,
whether it's 40%, 60%, or whatever the treatment centers say or the insurance companies say, so
sure.
what? Yeah.
A spiritual person would say I'm being present, and 1 day at a time is very close to that, because it's not just 1 day at a time. It could be moment to moment at
Oh,
times.
definitely. And spirituality is built on moment to moment. And when you have a connection, and however that connection works out in your spiritual journey, you're emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically not alone. You have people around you that are like-minded. You have a sense of an empowerment of an energy, a higher power, however you want
Or
to
a
talk.
brotherhood or sisterhood that existed
Yes, as I
before
the
you.
fellowship, right. So you've
Mm,
got fellowship, you've got like-minded people, you have, you know, real people to pick up a phone and say, hey, you know, I'm about ready to do something I don't want to do. That's a spiritual connection between two people that it's so nice not to have to explain yourself, because the person on the
there
end
you
of
go.
the phone goes, I hear you. I'm there. What do you need? Not tell me about it.
Right, right. What do you tell the person? Like, there's people watching this that might be thinking, okay, I know I'm on painkillers. I know I drink a lot, but I need to. I know I do this, but I don't think it's affecting my life. I don't think. At what point should they be concerned, or what are
Mm.
some red flags?
Well, you know, I think just that statement alone, if a person has to say that with any regularity,
Hmm.
there's a level of denial there, because people that don't struggle don't explain. So when I look
Okay.
at denial in three areas, there's the survival denial, which we all have. It's part of our emotional immune system. We have to have
Sure.
some, or we
Hmm.
wouldn't make it, you know.
Sure.
But many people go into a defense-based denial, and that's what I would describe you saying there. At this point, you're defending your behaviors and actions, that there's part of you, that your spirituality side of you is saying, this is not healthy for your psyche. This is not who you really are. But then
Yeah.
you throw it off by minimizing, rationalizing, blaming, whatever, avoiding, whatever it is. And then a certain group of people, which is oftentimes the ones that I get, are belligerent in their denial, where they are strongly, almost delusional about their addiction, and they are
Which means they're
fighting.
this close, right?
Yeah. And those are the ones that usually you can move pretty quickly into recovery once you poke some holes in their denial system in a loving and very caring way, but you're telling the truth of love. You're not blowing smoke and saying, yeah, that won't hurt you. But you know, you're saying, look at what the consequences are. Look at the world around you. You know, there's a line in Alcoholics Anonymous where the person comes out of the cellar after a big tornado, him and his wife, and he looks up and he says to his wife, well, everything's great. The wind stopped blowing. And the wife looks at him and says, are you kidding me? Look at the mess that's up here. The houses are destroyed. The animals are in trees. This is a mess. Well, that's a metaphor for the alcoholic. They stop drinking and they come out of the cellar and go, hey, everything's good. It's not good. The real work starts once you get clean.
Yeah, I think I heard from someone recently, particularly over the next 90 to 120 days,
Mm-hmm.
you're still in a fragile state in some ways,
Mm-hmm.
because you could get knocked off your center, right?
Oh, easily. And they call it post-acute withdrawal. And there's been lots of research over the years. Terence Gorski did a number of years of research on it. And you can pretty much map out. The funny thing is, in recovery rooms, they've known that since the 1930s, because they give the newcomers a 30-day chip, 60-day chip, a 90-day chip, the 6-month, 9-month, and then a year anniversary. And that will track right with post-acute withdrawal, because
Hmm.
post-acute withdrawal is stress-based. And when you're first changing your life, there's a tremendous amount of hormonal stress as well as emotional stress that's happening. Your cortisol levels, your brain waves, everything's changing. The different chemicals in your brain are
Yeah.
confused. So you're a physical and emotional. So there's your physical, there's your emotional, and your mental. And the answer oftentimes is to develop a close spiritual healing.
So what do you tell someone who's just really in denial and they just need a little bit more of a nudge? How about just having a chat with Bill?
Yeah, that works, and let's just sit down. And I'm a big believer. This gentleman I was talking to yesterday, he said, well, I just want to drink. I said, that's okay. That's your choice. You're over 21, but are you aware of the consequences if you do that? Because you were telling me you live at home, you're supported, the car, everything you have has been given to you by the people in your life that want you to stop. So
Right.
if you decide you want to, which is totally your choice, go right ahead. But every choice has a consequence. That made him pause.
And yeah, and it made him pause, and then
We were able to talk.
okay.
Then we could have an honest conversation about what it is. Why was he so in that defense-based denial where his right is to drink? And I didn't argue with him. I said, of course it is. You're a free human being. I'm not going to tell you what to do. That's my view of life. I can't make another person change.
Right.
Here's some options, but there's consequences. Whatever you do in life, there's consequences.
Well, and I imagine some people at some point, they say, it isn't fair. It just isn't fair. I mean, I'm 21, 28, 50.
Yeah.
I can't have another drink in my life.
It's not fair. Yeah. Well, you're right. It isn't. And it's not fair when people develop diabetes. People have certain cancers or different things in their life. It's not fair that somebody loses their limb. There's lots of things that happen in life because, as far as I know, we're not set up to live in a fair world. It doesn't seem to be that way. We have to make the best out of it and help each other and be there as each other's support. And if we lose a limb, then we help the other person. If we have an emotional problem or a physical problem, we're there to support and help because we're all vulnerable.
But the people you've helped over the years, what do you love hearing in testimonials, if you will, or from people? What puts wind under your wings, knowing that you were successful in working with them? What do you hear in that regard?
That's a great question because that's what keeps me going. In my teaching, I would tell the students, they'd say, well, how come you don't burn out? You've been a frontliner for years. And I say, want to keep my own recovery very, very close to me. It's not work that saves me. It's my own work I do that saves me.
Yeah.
But you're right about what keeps the sales going and what makes you feel good is when you see people that have struggled and you hear them a year, 2, 5, whatever it is later, and they're sharing the solution. And I have so many examples, at least a dozen examples of clients over the years that have gone on, that have surpassed their own dreams and goals. There's 2 that I can think of that are both now forensic psychologists, and both of them were, hope to die drunks, basically, and they've completely turned their life around, not only in their letters behind the name, but emotionally, spiritually, mentally. They're really connected people, and they're out helping other people. So what gives me a lot of hope is, look at all the people I've had the opportunity to touch because I fell so far that I ended up in a hospital with my addiction. Out of those ashes came a person that could help. Who knows how many people? I don't know. A number.
Make a difference. Yeah.
32 years, I'm sure I've touched a number of people. It's very
Absolutely.
humbling. Yeah,
it is, and it's amazing. And I know you sleep well at night because the kind of work you do isn't, it's helping, not hurting.
Oh yeah. And another reason why I love so much working with a place like Roots is because the therapists are so committed. We work a lot with mental health.
Yeah.
Dual diagnosed mental health, and it is a true dual diagnosis. I mean, they really work on both parts. But even the clients that are mental health clients that have no substance abuse, or in some cases have got their substance abuse under control, but the pandemic sent them off in the direction of depression and anxiety, they really connect from the heart issues. So in that particular center, which I've not seen in a lot of other centers, is there's a camaraderie there. I watch the clients feeding off each other, caring for each other, setting up their own. We're going to go for a hike this weekend. We're going to get together, you know, come on and do it. And the poor person who's depressed and isolated goes, I don't know. And they say, come on anyway, you'll have fun. And there's that. So that gives me a lot of positive energy when I see clients giving back to their peers. Because all of the things that we struggle with, mental health and addiction, are isolating illnesses. They're, you know, so to watch them engage others is very deep healing in itself. They don't even realize it by just going to a movie night, you know.
Sure.
Because they're not used to sitting around with 6 or 7 people and watching a movie and eating popcorn.
Right. In closing, what would your overall message be to people who are considering taking the step to calling you up, and also give your phone number? What would your message to them be?
Well, I would say that, you know, there's so many different aspects of recovery. And I know I specialize in working with family members of the addict in my private business. And I do coaching, family coaching on Zoom, so you don't even have to go anywhere. That's one thing about the pandemic. We really become very savvy with this, which I like, because the families are all over the United States.
Sure.
I think I would say that the biggest takeaway is not working. That's why you're considering calling. So don't talk yourself out of it, and just make the jump. Make the jump. Go ahead, and it is a risk. I understand, but it's a risk you can take. And on the other end of the phone, or the other end of the email, or whatever, Zoom, or whatever it is, how you're connecting, you're going to be surprised how much better you feel just in that initial call. If you don't call, you know what you're going to get: more pain, more isolation, more misery. If you pick up the phone, or if you reach out to another, you might just feel some twinge of relief. Yeah. So that's that positivity that I'm stressing. You know, how do you live in the positive? We know how to live in the negative. Yeah.
It's a new skill to learn to live in the positive when you've been doing the negative for so long, and the negative feels like reality to you. It doesn't feel negative.
Oh, no, not at all. There's a line in Alcoholics Anonymous where the Dr. Silkor says the alcoholic life, and you could put anything in there, becomes the only normal life. After a while, the addicted person can't differentiate true from false. You know, you don't have to teach, you know, I have grandkids. You don't have to teach them to be negative. You have to teach them to be positive, because the world can push them to the negative. So we got to push them to the positive.
And that comes from basic survival skills, like we want to be loved and accepted by the tribe.
Of course. Yeah. And you see that in why I love horses so much, because they're a herd animal, and they will go right to the people I'm working with and try to move into their herd. And if they're rejected, sometimes the client will say, well, they don't like me. And what I'm thinking is, actually, you're giving off a vibe that's, the energy's not right. So the horse who's so in tune to what you were just saying goes, ooh, that's uncomfortable. And when they change their vibe, it moves over.
Nice. And so you do horse therapy with people in recovery. Nice.
All the time. Yeah. The more and more families we can work with, because I like to work with the families, not just the identified patient, but with their families. We can do in 2 or 3 sessions what might take 6 to 8 sessions in a therapy, in a room, because you're outside.
So you work at Roots to Recovery in Long Beach, and you also have your private practice with this. How can people reach out to you?
The best way is my email, and I have the best email is my business email. I gave you my personal one, but my business email is enableism, one word, enableism, ISM, bridging the recovery gap, the initials. So that's actually, you know, it's better to do this. Just put in enableism.com.
There you go.
And it comes up. I don't need to give you the email. It'll all come up right there. Our website, the whole thing. I always forget that. Such a great marketer.
It is. Well,
I'm
I
a
mean,
frontliner, you know,
enableism.com.
I do the frontline work, you know, and you can always contact me at Roots. You know, I'm there at Roots 3 days a week, but I'm always can be contacted. And it's a great organization to be part of. So you can contact me there.
Yeah, their website is roots-recovery.com. Roots-recovery.com. And
So
yeah,
enableism.com and then the Roots. Yeah, good.
if you want to experience more of Bill Woodbury, go to enableism.com.
Mm-hmm.
This is Scott Ware with Radiance Magazine at radiancemm.com. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
Yes.
You know, because it was nice that Josh thought of me, you know, because I'm only there 3 days a week, not only, but I'm there 3 days a week, but I'm with him for so many years and I'm such a part of the team now that I just really love it. They have really good therapists. It amazingly connected people there. It's very nice.